They say truth is eternal, but history is fragile. It's made of parchment, ink, and memory, all of which can burn. And when they do, something even more terrifying takes their place: silence. Centuries ago, that silence spread across Europe like a fog. It swallowed knowledge, crushed art, and erased names. No one could say exactly what happened, only that there were once roads, aqueducts, and books, and then there was nothing. The people who came later called it the Dark Ages, a name born of fear. A time that history could not explain, so it buried it under darkness. But what if the darkness wasn't real? What if it was man-made, a shadow cast to hide the truth? When the Roman Empire fell, it didn't just crumble overnight. It fractured piece by piece until its once golden heart turned to dust. The great libraries burned, cities emptied, and trade stopped. But even in ruin, something felt off. Because the fall of a civilization leaves scars, ruins, skeletons, artifacts, whispers of what once was. And yet, in the centuries after Rome's collapse, the earth went almost silent. From around the year 600 to 900 AD, the record of human life thins like mist. It's as if 3 centuries slipped through the cracks of time. Few buildings, few records, few heroes. Historians called it regression. But could a regression be this complete? A man named Herbert Illig didn't think so. In 1991, he published a theory so wild that scholars laughed at first. He said, those missing years never happened. They were invented. He claimed we were living not in the 20th century, but in the 17th. And the reason we believed otherwise was because the people in power, emperors, popes, kings, wanted it that way. Think about it. The calendar we live by was built by those very same powers. And in a world without global communication or mass printing, truth was whatever the crown declared it to be. The year 1000 AD was seen as holy, the symbolic dawn of a new millennium. If you were an emperor, wouldn't it be tempting to place your rule in such a sacred time? Illig suggested that Otto III, the Holy Roman Emperor, along with Pope Sylvester II, simply added those missing centuries. They wanted to claim they were living in the new millennial age, not the 700s, but the year 1000. And so, around them, scribes and monks began to rewrite time itself. Old events were pushed forward. New kings were inserted into genealogies. Wars were created or extended to fill the gaps. And no one questioned it because only the elite could read. The rest of the world just believed. If that sounds impossible, consider this. In those days, even the concept of a year was unstable. Different regions measured time differently. There was no universal timeline, no Google Calendar of the Middle Ages. So, if a handful of powerful men decided to shift the count, who could stop them? Astronomers today can trace celestial events through time, but when they line up old records with modern science, some of them don't match. Solar eclipses recorded in ancient chronicles appear out of sync. The math suggests missing centuries, coincidence? Maybe. But Illig supporters say it's more than that. They point to architecture as another clue. Take the Romanesque cathedrals, massive, elegant, and technically advanced. They appear in the historical record immediately after the so-called Dark Ages end. How could civilization leap from barbaric huts to monumental cathedrals in just one generation, unless those missing centuries were never there at all? And what about Charlemagne, the legendary king, uniter of Europe, the father of the West? Some believe he was a myth, a patchwork figure built from smaller kings, created to fill that fabricated gap in time. In other words, a medieval Superman invented to make the rewritten history look real. But before you dismiss this as madness, think about something deeper. What if the past is a story that keeps being rewritten, not by accident, but by intent? Power doesn't just rule the present, it defines the past. And when you control the past, you control everything that follows it. Every religion, every empire, every ideology has at some point rewritten history to suit its needs. They've burned books, silenced thinkers, and altered names. Isn't that its own form of phantom time? Maybe the Dark Ages weren't literally invented, but their darkness was allowed to exist so that new powers could rise. The Church called it divine will, the emperors called it destiny, but maybe it was something more calculated, a political erasure. Imagine the monasteries of the 8th century. Candlelight flickers as monks copy manuscripts by hand. Every word they write is truth. Every word they omit is death. One missing page, one misplaced date, and centuries can vanish. Maybe they didn't know they were rewriting the world. Maybe they thought they were saving it. And so, a new version of reality took shape, a timeline reborn in silence. When the Renaissance finally came, humanity looked back and saw only darkness, believing it had climbed out of it. But what if that darkness was planted there to make the light seem brighter? Even today, the evidence is strange. Carbon dating, once thought foolproof, sometimes contradicts written chronologies. Ancient buildings appear younger than they should, and entire dynasties, like parts of the Byzantine Empire, seem compressed, too short to be real. It's as if someone trimmed and stretched history, like an old film reel. Meanwhile, records from China and the Islamic world continue smoothly. Their timelines don't show missing centuries. So, could it be that only Europe's timeline was edited, that the lie was local, not global? If so, who had the power to do it? And why risk discovery? Because truth doesn't just disappear quietly, it resists, somewhere hidden in ruins and scrolls. Fragments of the real timeline still whisper. Centuries later, scientists found astronomical records eclipses, comets carved into stone. When compared to modern sky maps, some events matched perfectly, but others were consistently off. By roughly 300 years, the same number Illig claimed had been added. Coincidence again? Maybe, but it's enough to make you wonder, because if even one piece of history was fabricated, then none of it is safe. But maybe that's the real point. Maybe the Dark Ages weren't meant to trick us about numbers, but to remind us how easily truth fades. Even if Illig was wrong, the mystery remains. How could an entire continent lose its memory? Imagine 1,000 minds born, working, and dying and leaving almost nothing behind. No poetry, no math, no art. It's as if the human spirit went quiet, as if someone pressed mute on civilization. Maybe they didn't call it the Dark Ages because the world was dark. Maybe it was because the light of knowledge was snuffed out by fear. Fear of heresy, of rebellion, of truth. Centuries later, the Renaissance would boast of rebirth. But rebirth implies death. So what exactly died? And who killed it? The truth is, every age of light is built on an age of darkness. Every empire hides a secret. And every historian knows absence is never accidental. Even if the Dark Ages truly happened, they were shaped by deliberate silence, by the stories that weren't told. And maybe that's what makes it the biggest cover-up of all. Imagine walking through an ancient cathedral today. You look at its perfect arches, its symmetrical stone, the work of artists supposedly living just years after barbaric times. How? Who taught them geometry and harmony when books barely existed? Maybe the knowledge never vanished. Maybe it was hidden, guarded by secret orders sworn to protect forbidden truths until the world was ready again. Maybe the Dark Ages were not an age of ignorance, but of protection, a vault of time, where knowledge was sealed away. And when the Renaissance came, they simply unlocked the door. Somewhere deep in the Vatican archives, countless manuscripts still lie unseen, written in languages no one outside those walls can read. What if the real story is buried there, hidden, not destroyed? Because truth is dangerous. It challenges power. It asks, what if you were wrong? And that's why the Dark Ages, whether real or invented, still haunt us. They remind us that history is not the story of what happened, it's the story of what was allowed to be remembered. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this journey into the shadows of history, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more mysteries.